Welcome to Athletes to Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct. We've created a platform to help people to network and connect through their common affinity groups. There are alumni groups from colleges. It could be business alumni. It could be fraternities, sororities, and athletes. But the idea behind the show is that we wanted to have former athletes, both collegiate and professional athletes, to talk about their journey and their transition out of sports, as it's a major issue today between mental health and financial literacy. And we really want to make an impact. So if we can teach and inspire some of these athletes, they're coming out now out of their college sports or professional sports, it would be a big thing. So today we're excited to have on with us Tim Wright. Now, I think I might have one other one, but I'm going to make a bigger deal about Tim is a Super Bowl champion playing for the Patriots. There, look at that ring, man. He's got some bling there, man. Everybody wants one of those things. Look at that thing. He had the pleasure of catching some passes from Tom Brady. But Tim has a great story that he's going to share with us today. He played football at Rutgers. He was a tight end there. Then he went on to the NFL. As I mentioned, he played for the Patriots and a couple other teams. But more importantly, he then transitioned out into the world of entrepreneurship and had a couple businesses. And now he's the co-founder of Dome Audio, which we're going to find out a lot about, which is just, to me, I've heard it a couple of times now from Tim, a phenomenal product that I think is going to help many, many people. So how you doing today, Tim?
I'm doing great, Rob. I'm really excited about the opportunity to tell my story and really just give back from my journey, all the things that I've really experienced and really being able to pour that back into the community. So I'm excited, man.
Oh, that's great. And we appreciate you being here. So I always ask, talk about playing sports growing up. And it could have been, obviously you played football, but I'm sure you probably played baseball, basketball, whatever. But talk about how that shaped you up through high school into college.
Yeah, sports was very, very important to my foundation. I mean, that's where you learn how to win. That's where you learn how to lose. And later on in life, as I started really to develop, I learned that you either win or you learn. And so taking the lessons of what you were able to learn in that loss is what you're able to then apply to that game that next week or the practice the next day and really get better. And that's the same thing, throughout life, and the same thing in entrepreneurship. There's great days. There's days that, it's rough and tough, but you really have to take the silver lining out of all of the days where you don't feel that you put some high numbers on the board and you just say, hey, look, this is going to allow me to come back and really have the compound effect. But growing up, being put in position for myself in leadership positions very early, where I was a captain on the team by my second or third year, Pop Warner. And football is where I really thrived when I was younger because there weren't too many other options growing up. I played soccer as my first sport when I was about like 4 or 5 years old. And I really enjoyed soccer, just running down the field, kicking the ball in the goal. But then football as a form of, all guys coming together and kind of like, all right, who has the ball? Let's all 11 go take them down. And once I get the ball, I don't want anybody tackling me. I'm taking it all the way to the goal. But it was the preparation throughout the week that you ultimately saw whoever applied themselves during the practice week were the ones who really strived and really were able to succeed on game day. And I really fell in love with the process very early, and I understood it. So being put in position of leadership, as well as understanding the process of preparation and what comes out of that, I think learning that and understanding that early was the true basis of how I was able to succeed in what I did throughout my life so far. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's great. And then did you dream of being a professional athlete?
I did, man. I mean, I always was very I know I was humble. I always told I was very humble growing up, but I was very grateful for the opportunity that I had in the moment. And I didn't take it for granted and look beyond the platform of where I was. But yes, I played Madden growing up. Yes, I watched, games on Sunday and even some college games. I think when I was growing up, the NFL stood out more to me than college sports until I really started understanding what college was. But understanding, the best players in the game of football, that's what you kind of modeled yourself after and had your favorite players. And then, of course, the franchise with Madden, they just did a great job of presenting that early. So that's what I grew up on, and that's what I aspired to be. And then eventually, once I got very aware of the steps, high school, then college, and then going into the NFL, I started to then really start setting my eyes on what college institution would be the right fit for me. And I'll tell you some things later on here with how Rutgers University came into the mix.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that as a fellow New Jersey, and I always like to hear stories about Rutgers. Had some bunch of friends from high school went there, so I always talk about it, joke around, is that I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. Unfortunately, the talent wasn't there, so I'm doing this.
Yes.
So let's talk about so you played football. One thing that I always every other show or so I bring up, but talk a little bit about social media. So when you were, I guess, in high school, it probably, if it was started, it was just starting type thing. Give me your thoughts on that as far as how athletes handle that, because I know you got to be very careful. You hear a lot of stories of just, unfortunately, mistakes people make, with social media.
Absolutely. Yeah. Actually, I would say it was when I was in college is when a lot of guys around me like kind of was mumbling about Facebook and MySpace. That was kind of like the thing then. Instagram actually came about around my senior year, which was in like 2012, is when it really started to buzz in the locker room. And that was my first account that I started. And so, I remember it wasn't as much etiquette then. It was kind of just like, hey, take a picture. You got a couple different filters, post it, throw it up, and whatever followers you got and whatever the system allowed you with the algorithms at the time, guys just had their fun with it. But now it's obviously transformed into a pillar to be able to generate income, to be able to tell your story, to be able to market you as a brand, your company as a brand, and just really push the envelope on creating awareness to tell the story that you want people to see. And I think it's so important to be very conscious and wise of what you're actually putting on the internet, because it could either put you in a very strong, successful position as a form of leveraging it, or it can completely dismantle your future and everything that you work for. So I think being very conscious and wise of what you put up and making, thinking twice, hey, like, what would this post get me? Not even saying I want to take a picture, I'm gonna post it through, I'm gonna write a caption and boom. Right. But truly saying, why am I taking this picture? What's the why behind anything that you're putting through, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Instagram. And now, high school students, college students leveraging LinkedIn is really critical. I think now with the NIL and everything that's starting to really infuse into athletics, athletes being able to really put the ball in their hands at a younger age. High school, we were just learning about what resumes were. I think now, if you don't know what a resume is or have an idea coming out of fifth grade, it's kind of like, all right, that's the time in middle school where you could really start shaping that. You can actually start doing some community service and really growing your extracurricular activities. So by the time you hit high school, you can start leveraging LinkedIn, because that's where businesses lie. And that's where, you being able to market yourself and being like top 3 in the country in your sport. Why not connect those dots and start getting NIL opportunities? Now, it's important to have, the structure in terms of parents being able to manage what that young athlete is being exposed to and what they're actually focused on and doing. But why not start setting yourself up for success and long-term success? I mean, you think about a professional athlete's career, particularly in the space of the NFL or a real hard combat sport, or contact sport, you have to look at the lifespan of what you have. And so that's now starting in high school. And your last down you play in, particularly in the NFL, that stretch of time is nothing but opportunity to generate income for yourself and your family. So with all that said, I think social media as a pillar is one that is just a major part of the journey of a young athlete now.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and you touched on it, so we'll bring it. You kind of set me up for the next question regarding NIL, name, image, likeness. Is it so when you were in college, it didn't exist yet, and I know that I've talked to other players too, like they would love to have it, but they also, I mean, you hear the stories of agents or maybe not even agents, you hear like donors and sponsors. And I guess there was a different way back then. But anyway, like with NIL, kind of give me both the positives and the negatives that you see.
Yeah. So for me, I think my era. So I've been removed now from college for 10 years. I graduated in 2012. And I would say when I was in school, the thought of being paid as an athlete was kind of like such an afterthought at that point. Like it wasn't even something real enough that we can like chomp our bits at. Like, I can't wait till it's past now, right? But when as social media started to rise, especially as I was in the NFL and I'm seeing, college athletes really starting to shine and grow major following. Now you're looking at, okay, what if they leverage that following and truly, started to monetize the influence that they had. So now looking at kind of that evolution, it was almost like when the sound bites started to come out of this NFL NIL thing really starting to be pushed through, it was almost like, okay, when is it going to happen? Because it's definitely going to happen.
Right.
And now that it has happened, I mean, you see some of the stories, and I think it's incredible. I think not everyone truly gets the opportunity to go all the way to professional sports and actually make it, and then make it something that could create some form of generational wealth for their family, or at least a head start, or a good jump in life. But sometimes you hear the stories that there's athletes that truly only go through their college career or a certain amount of years through their college career before the inevitable injury could happen or the inevitable mistake could actually happen. So if you can walk in the door and you can, again, starting in high school, build a following and, some type of influence and attraction by brands and by institutions such as colleges, why not from the day you walk in as a freshman, start truly bringing in some opportunity to generate income for you and your family? So I think it's the positives there. The only negative I see is the opportunities out there and the examples where the management and the structure around the athlete isn't in place. And I think everybody is learning on the fly, from the administrative staff to the coaching staffs to the actual players themselves. Everyone is figuring out at the same time how this thing needs to work and how it needs to look. So I don't think it's a fault on, some of the examples we see. Yes, there could just be some very unfortunate, mistakes that's been brewing for a long time. But those one mistakes in life, everyone makes mistakes.
Yeah.
As athletes, it's unfortunate, but we live in a glass bowl. So that's the nature of understanding that anything you do is going to be scrutinized, is going to be seen at that very moment, and it's going to be amplified to the point where it just cripples some of our athletes who really can't handle it. So I think the structure is important. And as long as that's there, I see it as a big positive.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that you hit on it. I think the education is probably, there needs to be more of it, because it's, we always talk about it. And we're talking about athletes, but it's just young people in general. Sometimes just the whole, to understand the management of the money even. And, I heard one story recently where this athlete, made, let's say, $30,000, $40,000. And because they lost their scholarship because it kind of like put them over another threshold. And then they spent all their money with their friends on different toys. And all of a sudden, like, what do I do? Like, I don't have a scholarship. I spent my, so that's the thing. But I think, it's a great thing. I think the education and like you said, it's everybody's kind of learning it right now.
Yeah.
So things, things I think will change. So let's talk about, athletes transitioning out of sports. So you go into college and you're playing a sport. When you were at Rutgers then, or even maybe now, talk about, was there education of more of that big picture? I mean, obviously you've done fantastic yourself, but as a school, did you see any of that where there's additional classes to kind of help prepare athletes that once their sport is over, there's other things they can do?
Yeah. So from a macro standpoint, when I was in college and what I was being exposed to at that time, there was a lot of different examples pulled and technology was where it was at 15 years ago, because I went in college in 2018.
Right.
So, 15 years ago, being presented with these presentations of why you should come to, our particular school versus others, and what, from a macro standpoint, the NCAA is doing for college athletes. I felt like consciously and from an effort standpoint, they were always trying to put in programs and different exposure points for the athletes to just find what strikes your interest outside of sport.
Okay.
And, like, here are, all the list of majors and minors and different activities that you can get infused in, whether it was internships or anything outside of, whatever time you had on your hand that you could be useful of it. But I can only speak from my experience. And just to before this doesn't get mentioned, I just wanted to give a quick background. So when I grew up in Neptune, New Jersey, and the school name was Neptune Scarlet Flyers. At a very young age, I was a sophomore in high school, and our coaching staff had got dismantled, and there was something that I saw in my academic performance that I needed something better. So I went to my parents and I approached them. I said, "Hey, mom, dad, do you mind if I transfer to Wall Township?" And Wall Township was on the other side of town, and in the county that we lived in. And they literally, without a second thought, they said, "Tim, you have your body of work and your track record. We trust you, and we're behind whatever you feel and will be best for you." I transferred, and that school name was Wall Crimson Knights.
Wow. There you
Last
go.
but not least, in Neptune, I grew up on a street named Rutgers. And so
Wow.
if you put all of it together, it spells out Rutgers Scarlet Knights. And when I realized that, I'm, just me being who I am, of course, like where I am today and what I'm doing today, and really being an example of more than an athlete, I'm able to speak from a place that I was conscious of this very early. And I give a lot of thanks and, just my gratitude to my family in raising me this way. I know I was born with something in me, but they also reinforced it to bring the greatness out of me. But making that decision was the best decision I made to transfer. And then the position that it put me in to actually earn a full scholarship to Rutgers, it was like, boom, I made it happen. So I had the option of, by the time I committed my junior year of high school, I had about 15 or so full ride scholarships from pretty much all the Big East and then a few other schools. I was told by recruiters that if I didn't commit yet and I didn't, waited till, sign my senior year of high school, I probably would have had every college in the country as an offer. And so with that said, I was going into it where I wanted to set myself up from an academic position so that after school, no matter what happened, I was going to be in a successful position. Athletics, I believed in Coach Shiano, and he was a phenomenal coach and actually made an impact on all of the program. Every player that comes through Rutgers University, he's turning boys into men. And there's times where I've heard from my teammates and colleagues throughout college, and then especially talking about the stories and reminiscing afterwards, we were just saying, and this is a reflection on his effort to put these programs in place around us while we were in school. But guys would just talk about how tough it was in college, but then say, "Man, I'm so grateful for Coach Shiano literally infusing those core values into me, because it's what I rely on today as a man, a husband, a father." And so I'm speaking from my experience directly. That's what the program, that's what the culture, and that's what the university gave to us. It was an open book. It was an open opportunity, and the resources were there. It's only so much you can actually demand an athlete or a player to do. But I would say my experience at Rutgers and what they offered, and then now from what I'm seeing in terms of all of these athletes now really trying to transition into business, there's a good portion of those athletes who are true entrepreneurs, like literally create something from scratch and build it and see it all the way through. But there's a lot of actual businessmen and businesswomen that come through college athletics and then go into whatever career afterwards if they have an opportunity to play professional sports. But once they leave, what does that look like? And you know, for me, NFL, I understood, again, just being very observant of the platform I was on and my surroundings. NFL stood for not for long. And so knowing that, I didn't say, okay, I'm gonna just blindly ride this wave, ride this career out and do what I can and not even think about anything outside the lines. But I was always growing up a very imaginative person, and I always thought outside the box. And now in business, I'm told by many that I'm a visionary, but I know how to execute. And so growing up with a big imagination, that's exactly the appropriate type of, you know, phase in your life where you want to dream big, you want to think outside the box. And once you plant that seed, it just grows over time. Right. So for me, that's what I am. That's how I see NCAA as a whole and the resources they bring from a macro standpoint. But I know there's always more from a micro standpoint. And that's what, you know, we're waiting to see. We're waiting to see. It's evolving. We see a lot of product and a lot of good examples coming out, you know, such as myself and others, but it can always be more. And it's not only on the institution or the staff or the administrative, you know, ecosystem, it's also on the athlete too, to understand it and go get more because it's out there.
And I've talked to some different like coaches and agents, and they say the same thing. I mean, I think you could have all the programs out there, but ultimately the athlete has to buy into it too. And you know, when they're so zoned in on sports, sometimes they might not be able to. But like your story is great. So I mean, you know, you obviously saw that, you know, all the way through and looked at the bigger picture. I think a lot of times they're kind of drilled down into the more the sport itself. So talk a little bit about you know, Alumni Direct. We're kind of obviously about alumni engagement and just the importance of networking, connecting with alumni. So kind of twofold. One, when you were at Rutgers, did alumni come back? And I'm talking about, it doesn't matter whether athlete alumni, but alumni in general, talking to the athletes and not just, you know, coming back for like, you know, golf and things like that, but more about, you know, job opportunities, mentoring, things like that. And then talk about when you were there, and then maybe talk about today and maybe your interaction with Rutgers.
Yeah, no, they, you know, Coach Shiano, the staff, they both athletics, both former athletes and letter winners of Rutgers University and schools, they always open the door for guys to come back and be around. And, you know, for me, I definitely saw that, like, especially the NFL guys that came back, they're alumni, right? But when they came back and they actually laced up the cleats during summer workouts and was on the turf with us and doing workouts and doing one-on-ones afterwards, you model yourself after that. So that was great influence. And it was, again, having the open door that the staff was so, you know, adamant about bringing guys in to have that engagement was critical. But I also appreciated, and I had just as much interest when the staff actually brought folks in that didn't necessarily, maybe they did go to a professional level in terms of the actual sport itself, but they were successful in business.
Yeah.
They were successful in corporate America. And so that's what I also listened to very keenly because, again, growing up, both my interests were athletics and entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
I just loved it. And I listened very keenly and paid attention to it. It wasn't an afterthought. I didn't tune out when, you know, someone came in to talk about the importance of business or the importance of having a great career outside the lines. But yes, we definitely got exposed to it. And I would say nowadays, I see it the same way. You know, you kind of follow some college platforms and you see who they bring in, you see who they're exposed to. And I truly think that social media platforms, they bring the world closer together. Yeah. You know, platforms such as Alumni Direct, it brings the world closer together specifically for what the impact you want to make and the influence you want to make in the space of alumni, the space of college athletics, the space of athletes, and bringing everybody together with this understanding. And of course, corporate folks and whatever is able to be now offered in terms of a career outside of sport. right?
Right.
So from what I'm seeing with social media and all of these institutions essentially putting their highlights on their platform, you see that there's never a moment that you can't stop bringing just good reinforcement in.
Right.
And I just think that creates a great platform for impact for all the athletes and for all the student body that goes to college.
Yeah, I mean, I think just it's definitely people need to tap into. I mean, one guy, an agent, was telling me that the biggest thing he sees is the best time for athletes to be networking is when they're still playing. And he said a lot of athletes don't necessarily do that. And then when the time's over, unless you're again some superstar athlete that everybody knows your name, all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, it's not as easy as you thought because you just didn't build that network and that group behind you.
Yeah, see, I would say for myself, it was the second half of my college career. I think it was maybe around my junior year where I really started to be active with networking. But when I was younger, when I was a freshman, sophomore, and I would hear it, it didn't resonate as much as it did. And once you're starting to mature and get older, that's just that's the reality of evolution. Sure. It doesn't just, okay, because I'm telling you it's going to click. But what I would tell the younger athletes and the younger students in college, even in high school, because it now, again, that the habits and the conditioning of what you do and what was happening in college 10 years ago, 15, now it's now in high school, right? So what I would say is for younger athletes and younger students, take heed of what people are saying that's now removed from college and who are now alumni and who are now business people or professional athletes. Take heed of what they're saying of the importance of networking. Yeah. And as long as you're open to hearing that and processing that, once it does click, that's when you can take the most advantage of the idea of networking.
Yeah.
And for myself, in business, you have these up and downs. We talked about it very, very early on, the hard times, the good times, the wins and the lessons, right? I tore my ACL at the height of my career, my sophomore year at Rutgers. I was going in to dominate the country. I was going in to be a game-changing wide receiver. And I actually played wide receiver in college. And then in the NFL, I got my position switched to tight end. And that's where I was able to then thrive. But when I tore my ACL, at the height of all the work that I put in, like anybody from my team will tell you, from the coaching staff down, Tim Wright was about to literally rip the NCAA in half. And right on the field, pretty much last play of practice, 2-minute drill, I run a route, catch a pass, I get twisted up. Done. Just like that. The entire season done just like that. What do you do now? And that's where I had to get up. I had to shake it off. I got my surgery and I never looked back. I said, I'm coming back and I'm going to be even better and I'm going to make even more of an impact on just the environment around me at that time. So, that's what I was able to learn from. And then in the NFL, it happened again. Boom. Tore my ACL in 2016.
Same one?
No, the opposite one.
Okay.
Again, that's why I said, not only did I know the business of sports, but I truly said, for me and my journey through this profession, NFL is not for long. So what do I do? And yeah, man, I made it worth what it was.
So talk about because in a sense you had like many transitions there, but talk about your first year transition out of college sports into professional, and then after that talk about professional into the real world, so to speak.
Absolutely. So no, everything I learned throughout my upbringing. Again, I take it back to my family raising me. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for all the lessons in sports, like the first topic we were on. And then, going through college now you're a young man. Nobody's holding your hand anymore. And you have to make it, again, worth your while. When I got the opportunity to go into the NFL, I was undrafted. So I didn't get selected. I had the option to choose where I went to have the best opportunity to make it. When I went in there, fortunately, Coach Shiano from Rutgers was then the head coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where I chose. The power of networking and the power of making relationships. So that's the importance. networking is a cliche idea in a
Yeah.
sense. The power of building relationships is where you truly optimize
Yeah.
networking, right? So half the staff from Rutgers ended up going with Coach Shiano down to Tampa. And I did 5 years at school. I tore my ACL my third year, and I did my last 2 years there. And Coach Shiano left after my fourth year. So when I got down there, all the relationships that I had at Rutgers was essentially scattered throughout the building. And it was that truly supported the hump that I had to go over, the bridge I had to cross, or the mountain that I had to climb to transition from wide receiver to tight end, walking in a room with six other tight ends. I was seventh on the depth chart, never
Wow.
played the position as an undrafted free agent. I was the youngest in the room. By the end of training camp, I ended up beating four of the guys to make the roster.
Wow. That's great.
After the third game, the fourth game, I ended up winning the starting position and never looked back. I broke the franchise record for touchdowns. I tied the NFL record over the last 10 years for the most catches by a rookie tight end. Next thing you know, I get tapped on my shoulder and I'm traded. 3 hours later, I'm on a flight from the practice field in Tampa Bay to the doors of New England. I walk in, I shake Bill Belichick's hand. He says, Tim Wright, we're glad you're here. Now you have to learn 60 plays overnight, and you're
Wow.
starting in the game tomorrow so we can see this is who we actually just brought in this door and that you can perform and stay here. When I walked in the locker room, I'm walking past future Hall of Famers, Pro Bowl players, and they said, come over here, meet Tom. And they said, hey, Tom, look who's here. And he stands up and he said, Timmy Wright, I know who you are. Let's go win this thing. I look up and my locker is right next to Tom Brady.
Wow. That's awesome.
Just talking about this, playing Madden at 12 years old, 13 years old, using Tom Brady, right? And now in real life, I'm sitting next to this guy. He said, let's go win it. I hit the ground running and I caught 6 touchdowns from Tom Brady and ended up bringing home the Super Bowl championship.
There you go. There we see it again.
Like, it's that. It doesn't just happen overnight.
No.
It's an evolution of the seeds that you plant in life.
Yeah.
And so with that said, taking that, tearing my ACL after year 3, I ended up going to Detroit. I, had a pretty much a successful season for the time that I was able to, get on the field. It was a situation where I got traded again and they had some guys already established, but when I got on the field, I made it count. And that's the most important thing. The time you get, make it count. And then I tore my ACL in 2016. I come back to Rutgers, and I didn't talk about this yet, but at the age of 13, I picked up a pair of clippers from a bad haircut. And literally, I started cutting my hair because I love art all throughout my life. I had the best projects, and I was just a very neat and crafty person and creative person. My dad showed me a couple tips. I started cutting my hair, and for the last 20 years, I've been cutting my hair. All throughout high school, I cut my hair. I started expanding my clientele. When I got to college, I was a full-time student, a full-time football player, and eventually a captain and a full-time barber. And I did that throughout all 5 years. When I tore my ACL and I was able to stand on my leg, I literally was cutting hair, and that was the way that I was able to lead from the locker room and the sideline. But the students, all from around Rutgers that came from all different parts of the world, were some of my clients. And so each week I got to pick people's brains about what they love from, the standpoint of being a consumer, what they didn't like about certain things in the market, certain products, certain brands. And it was just, think about it as when you sit down with your barber or your hairstylist or, it's like a form of therapy.
Yeah.
And me as the barber, cutting hundreds of people's heads, all ranges, coaches, kids, my peers, my teammates, college students, like all through all different grade levels. I was able to soak that all in. And I said, when I have the means one day, this was my vow, literally, and we talk about this. I was asked to be the keynote speaker at my senior year's alumni luncheon, in our scholarship luncheon. And when I spoke, all the alumni, all the donors, people started coming up to me after, because I said two things. I said, one day I want to start a foundation, and I ended up naming it the Right Way Academy. And I was able to achieve that in 2015, literally 2 or 3 years after I finished school. I also said, I want to come back and I want to open up a business on campus called The Right Cut. And in 2016, I was able to come back and open the doors for The Right Cut. And it's been going for 7 years now, and it's made incredible impact on the university.
That's
And so
awesome.
I already knew what I had in mind and what my mission was, what I wanted to accomplish. But now what I'm doing is impacting the world with the future of sound, and that's Dome Audio. And so it's a headphone technology. And if you don't mind, Rob, I'll just, give it a quick.
Yo, this is it. Yeah, here's the commercial. But yeah, definitely, this is an awesome product.
Yes. So I'm the co-founder and chief strategic officer. And again, guys, all the listeners, everything I did throughout my journey is what led me to what opportunity I have today. And so with this technology here, this is a new concept of headphone. It's a completely new silhouette and design and aesthetic of what we know as headphone. This is the world's first open and closed ear phone conduction headphone. So now you have the opportunity to put this headphone on. It wraps around your ears. There's 2 speakers that sit on the jawbone and the mastoid bone, and you can hear your music, take phone calls, and speak through your headphone and communicate to other headphones while hearing the world around you. And then when you want to block out the outside world, we have this dome cover, and we call it headphone real estate. On the face of this cover is a blank canvas that allows Dome to put any logo and any brand and any social cause on the face of this Dome cover to tell a story and to appeal to a community and a demographic that we're doing a release to. But when you put this Dome cover on, it attaches to the frame of the headphone like this, and then it blocks out the outside world. So the idea is that you can literally have this one headphone, and you can have multiple and dozens of different dome covers with whatever brand, whatever look you want, and you can interchange it on the fly. But the experience is jaw-dropping because you can hear your music, but you can also feel your music. And that's a dynamic that we truly haven't seen on the market. So Dome Audio is coming to a dome near you. And we're right now in the stage of truly our mission is to impact the way the world experiences sound. And we're at the point where we're engineering and we're developing and we're starting to tell our story to the world, such as your platform, Rob, such as, we've been featured in Forbes, we've been featured in Time Magazine and Upscale Magazine and various magazines, but pretty soon we'll then now be landing on TV and really having this segment and be brought to, a community near you with our pop-up listening experiences. So listen out and watch out for Dome Audio. We'll be coming to, again, a dome near you very soon. And you can find us and get information from dome1sound.com. Dome One Sound is where you can get all the information and, reserve an opportunity to be a part of Dome Nation. And as we roll this thing out and really scale it to a giant business, it's truly going to be set to really disrupt the industry. And that's all I know. I know how to be creative. I know how to execute. I know how to bring people together with a mission and really drive something forward that can be a benefit of everybody. So that's what we have for Dome Audio.
And wasn't you talked about a little bit too? Aren't you working in areas where it could help hearing impaired too?
Absolutely. So our technology not only works for people who are normal hearing, and that's the phenomena with Dome headphones, but it also works for people who are deaf and hard of hearing. This is a new experience we're bringing to the world of literally 7.5 billion people who have some degree of normal hearing, who has experienced technology through headphone, throughout history. But now we're bringing a meaningful experience for a community of 500 million people or more who are part of the deaf and hard of hearing community. And now they can enjoy the same headphone technology that the rest of the world enjoys. So we're literally bringing the world together with one headphone, one sound. And that's what we have.
That's awesome. So tell people, you mentioned that the site, tell people how they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me. I'm on Instagram at Tim Wright 81. You can follow Dome Audio. You'll see me a lot because I'm the face and spokesperson of the company. So you could check out Dome X1 Sound on Instagram. So Dome X, the number one sound on Instagram, and you can follow our journey and the impact that we're making around the world. So
That's it. Yeah, it's awesome. I'll tell you what, especially being able to impact it, that the hearing impaired is fantastic. So we'll put all that in the show notes. You can find us on alumnidirect.com. You can follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and then follow the show. I think this is an important area that, we've talked about. There's a lot of challenges that athletes face in transitioning out of sports, and we really want to make an impact. And Tim's got a great story here, and we've had some other great stories as well. So thank you again, Tim. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rob. And like you said, everybody go follow up Alumni Direct, Athletes to Entrepreneurships. You'll get a lot out of it. And you have to support, man. It's reciprocal. So thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.